Hello, Packers fans around the world. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. Thank you again for helping us to get to 10,000 subs just a few days ago. We really appreciate the support. Hopefully, we can get to 12,000 over the next couple weeks. That would be great. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. If you're a subscriber, please hit the like button because that helps other people discover this content. Today we're going to continue our tour around the Green Bay Packers up to date while they are eagerly awaiting the return to action next week against the Bengals. The Packers are spending the next week doing some rest and recreation, and that's super important for the Green Bay Packers in particular. We've got significant injuries on the offensive and defensive line. We've got injuries at wide receiver. And all these key injuries hopefully coming to a point where the players can get back into action against the Bengals is super important right now. Matt LaFleur was asked in his press conference the other day what was their most important thing to do, and he said, get healthy. And I think that's 100% true. So while the Packers players are resting and recuperating and getting ready for the rest of the season. In fact, I saw Micah Parsons was actually at the Texas State Fair. My guess would be that he just stayed in Dallas after the game against the Cowboys. That would make the most sense versus going back to Green Bay just to come back to Dallas. That's where his family is. So I'm glad to see Micah Parsons out there getting some well-earned rest and recreation. But while the players are resting this week, I 100% guarantee that Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley, and the rest of the coaching staff are working at doing a self-examination of the team, trying to find out what's working, what's not working, and what they can improve on for the rest of the season. And that's kind of what we are doing as well on the channel. We're taking a look at the team position by position. Today we're looking at the defensive line. We've already covered quarterback and running back and the offensive line. We're going to do defensive line today, and then we're going to do secondary, corner, and safety tomorrow. So we'll get through each position group. I'm also going to try to take a look at special teams. That's really tricky because it has players from multiple groups. But we're going to take a look at it, try to figure out what the Packers can do to improve on special teams, because it's my opinion that special teams is a big part of why we lost against Cleveland and we tied against the Cowboys. So if we could clean up some stuff on special teams, we get some players back healthy, defense gets back into a groove after that wild shootout with the Cowboys, I think this team can roll off a bunch of wins. I would argue the next 5 or 6 games are probably the easiest games on the Packers schedule. It's the best opportunity for the Packers to get a significant run in the standings. They up from the Bengals up until the Packers play the Eagles at home. That is a significant time for, number one, to get some wins in the win column. Number two, the Packers really want to gain momentum and capabilities going into that game against the Eagles, because it's probably the best opportunity for the Packers to get right against the Eagles is at home in a big game where the Eagles have to come in on the road, and there's no reason that the Packers can't compete with the Eagles if they get to their maximum potential between now and that game. So each game, in my opinion, from now until the Eagles, is trying to get better each and every week, build momentum, build continuity, and get to the point that when the Eagles come into town, the Packers feel confident that they can go toe-to-toe with the defending champs. So let's take a look at the defensive line now. The defensive line is a source of a lot of attention, obviously, with the trade of Micah Parsons. And Micah Parsons has played well, and it's not just the impact Parsons has, but how it helps the whole offense, the whole offense struggle against the rest of the Packers defense. So Micah Parsons helps the rest of the pass rush, which helps the rest of the defensive line perform at a higher level, which allows the secondary to perform at a higher level because they have to hold on to coverage and protection much shorter with the addition of Micah Parsons. So the defensive line really, in all honesty, is what makes a defense work. Okay? Your corners are obviously very important, as well as your safeties and your linebackers, but it's all about the fact that the defensive line has to put pressure on the quarterback. Otherwise, eventually, the offense will find a way to make a play and get a player open. That's just how the NFL works. While there's amazing athletes on offense and defense, on the whole, the best, most talented players physically are on the offensive side of the ball, and defense is really just trying to hold on until the end of the play. And that's where the defensive line is so critical, not just for the Packers, but for every defense in the NFL. So Micah Parsons, let's take a look at him first. Parsons has been everything as advertised and more. His impact is not just seen in his stats. He's a leader that makes everyone better with his disruptive presence. One thing that's been a little light is sacks. So Micah Parsons is behind the curve on typically where his sacks would be at this point in the season, but he's adjusting to a new defense. The defense is adjusting to him. I think the sacks are going to come. So my future expectations for Parsons will continue to be an elite star in getting sacks in bunches as we go against some of the teams over the next couple weeks. I think there's real opportunities for Micah Parsons to have multiple sack days in the weeks ahead. So I'm really excited about Micah Parsons, but it's really just his leadership and competitiveness that really is a big addition to this team. He's shown consistently that he's a leader on the field and off the field of this defense. He's also extremely competitive. We've had multiple sources tell us that Micah Parsons competes at everything, from ping pong to bowling to basketball to playing horse to doing sprints in practice. Micah Parsons is all about competition, and it really is something that will be contagious throughout the rest of the defense. And I think Micah Parsons' leadership, his disruption, and his ability to make big plays in big situations is really what they brought him for, and he's doing everything they've asked him to do and more. Let's look at Marshawn Gary. Gary's on pace for a career year in sacks and has been solid against the run. There's no question that Rashawn Gary is not on pace to have a career year this year. His sacks are coming more frequently. He's getting consistently single-teamed instead of double-teamed, which he's had his whole career. I expect Rashawn Gary to continue to get sacks on a consistent basis. He's also pressuring the quarterback consistently, and he's doing really good against the run. So I think Rashawn Gary is going to have a career year in sacks, and he's really going to show that he is, while he might be the Robin to Micah Parsons' Batman, Robin can really kick some ass as well. So I think Rashawn Gary's going to continue to have an excellent season, barring an injury. Next up, we have Lucas Van Ness. Production to date has also been amazing. He's on pace for a career year in pressures. He's also been excellent against the run. He's played meaningful snaps as the number 3 defensive end and inside as part of the rotation at defensive tackle. I think that will continue. You will consistently see Lucas Van Ness in key passing downs to be in the center at defensive tackle and pushing the rest of the pocket along with Wyatt, Parsons, and Rashawn Gary. It's really a very formidable defensive line. I expect more of the same from Lucas Van Ness. I will think he will end up with 7 to 8 sacks by the year's end. If you watch the tape, there are so many pressures where Lucas Van Ness is just a hair's breadth away from getting a sack. Those sacks are going to come, and I think Lucas Van Ness will get 7 to 8 sacks by the year's end, which will be a career high for him. Next up, we have Kingsley Enagbare. Enagbare continues to be a key part of the defense off the bench and is playing like he is in the final year of his contract, which he is. He's on pace for his best year. I expect more of the same for Enagbare. He's going to be a key depth on this defense. One caveat that I want you to watch carefully: if the defensive line is healthy close to the trade deadline, it would not surprise me if Enagbare gets traded away at the trade deadline, because he is a quality depth piece. At some point, other teams are going to lose players on the defensive line, and if that's the case, Enagbare would be a great piece to trade away for some draft capital before the trade deadline. So I do expect Enagbare to be a player possibly that will be traded. If you look back to my training camp videos, I consistently said I didn't think Enagbare had a role on this team and that he'd probably be traded. But what happened at the end of training camp is the Packers had a bunch of defensive line injuries and Enagbare stayed on the roster. I think that might change once we get to the trade deadline. So watch that very carefully, because we have a lot of up-and-coming players like Darren Sorrell. Darren Sorrell has done well in limited snaps and is exceeding expectations for his draft position. I expect more of the same, and we might see more snaps later in the season, again, if there is a player that's traded away. Brenton Cox, he's been solid on limited snaps, and he is quality depth on the defensive line. I expect more of the same from Brenton Cox. Now let's look at defensive tackle. Defensive tackle is hugely important, and Devonte Wyatt has been really exceeding expectations. He's been a key part of the defense. He's holding down the middle far better than expected. He has 2 sacks and 13 pressures from the defensive tackle position, and that makes Wyatt a beast. He was injured in week 4, and once he was out, the defense started to crumble, especially in the the run defense. So I do hope that with 2 weeks off, Wyatt will be back in the starting lineup against the Bengals. He's apparently week to week with his knee injury, and if he stays healthy, I think he will continue to be a key starter in the middle of this defense. One of the things the Packers really need to work on over the bye week and in future weeks is they need to find an answer for Wyatt if he's injured. Okay? We saw it against the Cowboys. The Packers need to find either players on the roster or possible free agents, or maybe a low-risk, high-reward trade to get some additional defensive tackle depth. And I really think that's one of the keys to the Packers having a consistent run defense in the second half. It can't all be Wyatt. They have to find a combination of players that can help spread the load and also fill in for Wyatt if he's hurt. Colby Wooden has really been performing quite well. Wooden went from a possible roster cut to a starter when Kenny Clark was traded away as part of the Michael Parsons deal. Wooden has played at a great level given his expanded role and limited experience. He's a big body. He actually puts above average pressure from the defensive tackle position. One of his weaknesses has been run defense. So I hope he will continue to grow into this role and he will hold up for the whole season. That's something we really have to watch. So Colby Wooden is a key player to watch. Again, an additional player at defensive tackle probably would be a good thing to look at before the trade deadline if it continues to be a depth problem for the Packers. Then we have Nasir Stackhouse. He did not have a good situation against the Cowboys. He actually was thrown in there unexpectedly, and he was a big part of the run defense issues in that game. The Cowboys were consistently able to run to one side or the other of Stackhouse, and he wasn't able to get into position to make the tackles. To be fair, he was thrown in with little prep in the game due to injuries, so I'm hoping Nasir Stackhouse will continue to develop and get better over time, especially against the run. So that's a rundown for the Green Bay Packers defensive line. Overall, I think they had 3 weeks of great production. Then they stumbled against the Cowboys, but a lot of that was due to the injury to Wyatt in the middle of the game. And I do think this defensive line will continue to be a strength both against the run and against the pass, and will continue to make things easier for the linebackers and the secondary. So join us tomorrow, and we're going to go over the corners and the safeties and how they played to date, what they can work on the bye week, and how they can come out better than ever for the rest of the season. So as always, go Pack Go, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video discussing the secondary at the bye week. Talk to you then.